My daughter, Roxy, is my pride and my heartbeat wrapped up in one tiny 8-year-old body. From the moment she came into this world, I knew my job was to protect her, to nurture her, and to make sure nothing ever broke that little bubble of joy she carries with her everywhere. Every night, no matter how exhausted I was, we had a ritual. I'd sit with her on her bed or sometimes on the couch, reading her favorite book, letting her imagination run wild while the real world faded into the background. It was a small, sacred moment, just the two of us. That night, we were deep into Charlotte's web, right at the part where Charlotte begins writing her cryptic messages to save Wilbur from the butcher. Roxy was glued to the pages, her tiny hands clutching the blanket as she gasped at the thought of Wilbur being in danger. "Daddy, he's going to be sold, isn't he? He can't die," she whispered, eyes wide and glimmering with tears. I tried to reassure her, my voice gentle but firm. "No, Pumpkin, Charlotte will make sure he's safe. Look, see, she leaves messages so the farmer knows Wilbur isn't just some pig." And then she looked up at me with a curious, almost serious expression and asked, "Like the man in your closet?" I laughed nervously. "Yeah, silly, just like the man in my closet." But the moment those words left her lips, something cold crawled down my spine. It wasn't just a child's imagination anymore. It was a warning I couldn't ignore. The room felt heavier, darker somehow, even though the lamp was still on. I tried to shake it off, to laugh it away, but deep down I knew that tonight something had shifted. And as I tucked her in and kissed her forehead, that same unease lingered, wrapping around me like a shadow I couldn't shake. Because when Roxy mentioned the man in my closet, I didn't just hear a child's fear. I felt the first whisper of something very, very real, something that would change our lives forever. After tucking Roxy in, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, or maybe listening. The house was silent, except for the faint hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards. I kept telling myself, it's nothing, just imagination, just a kid's story mixing with shadows. But the words she said, "the man in your closet," repeated in my mind like a drumbeat I couldn't escape. Eventually, curiosity and something darker, something primal, forced me to get up. I crept down the hall, careful not to wake Roxy, and stopped in front of the closet. My hand hovered over the knob. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. It's empty, nothing's there. But when I opened it slowly, what I saw made my stomach turn. The closet was normal, shirts, shoes, boxes, but at the edge, tucked under a pile of clothes, was a sticky note, a single note, bright yellow, and written in bright red ink were the words, "Some pig."
I froze. My mind spun, trying to rationalize. Maybe Roxy dropped it. Maybe it was from the book. But no, it was too perfect, too precise. The same words Charlotte had written to save Wilbur. My pulse raced, every hair on my body standing on end. I grabbed a bat from the corner of the room, my senses sharpening with fear and adrenaline. "If there's anyone here," I shouted, my voice trembling despite my attempt to be firm, "come out now, or I'm calling the cops!" I searched the house, room by room. Nothing. Not a shadow, not a sound. My daughter stirred in her sleep, murmuring something about a story, oblivious to the terror gripping me. I returned to the living room, shaking, trying to convince myself it was over. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The note wasn't just a coincidence. It was a message. Someone or something was here, watching, communicating, waiting. And that night I realized our home was no longer a safe space. It had become a place where shadows whispered and secrets lurked in the corners. The reality hit me hard. Roxy wasn't imagining this. Something from the story, or something far worse, had crossed the line into our world. And if it could leave a note for me, what else could it do? The next morning I couldn't focus on anything. Coffee tasted bitter, my mind replaying the sticky note over and over like a broken record. Roxy went off to school, humming happily, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. I tried to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, it had been a prank. Maybe a neighbor, a friend, someone with too much time and little sense. But deep down, I knew the truth. It wasn't a prank. It was something else. Something patient, something deliberate. When Roxy left, I began searching the house with a new intensity. I checked every nook, every cranny, closets, under beds, behind cabinets, even the crawl space in the attic. My heart pounded with every step. My flashlight flickered, casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. And then, in her room, my blood ran cold. Between the pages of one of her books, I found a thin notebook I had never noticed before. Its spine was cracked, yellowed with age, and sticking out just slightly was another yellow sticky note. I opened it, hands trembling, and what I saw made me step back. The pages were covered, completely covered with notes. Short, strange, sometimes nonsensical phrases scrawled across every line. Hello, Roxy, window, daddy. The handwriting was messy, childlike, but precise. As I flipped through page after page, I realized these weren't just random words. They were messages. They were for Roxy. They were for me. And somehow, they were coming from the closet. Panic clawed at my chest. What kind of person or creature could be leaving these notes, and why? My mind raced through the possibilities, each one darker than the last. I called the neighbors. I tried to convince myself to call the police. But what would I say? Someone invisible is leaving notes in my daughter's room? They think I'd lost my mind. No, I had to handle this myself. I had to understand what was happening before it got worse.
By the time Roxy came home from school, I had devised a plan. Stay close, observe her, try to catch a glimpse of whatever or whoever was behind this. But she walked in smiling, skipping, completely normal, and plopped down on the floor grabbing a book. She didn't even notice the notebook in my hand. She just looked at me, eyes wide with excitement. "Daddy, he left me another note," she chirped, holding up a small yellow square. My stomach sank. The man or thing in the closet wasn't done, and I began to realize the terrifying truth. This was only the beginning. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind outside made my heart leap into my throat. Roxy was in bed, but I couldn't stop thinking about the notes, about the way they appeared, always precise, always leaving a trail only she could understand. I told myself to stay calm, to rationalize, but my mind wouldn't allow it. Rationality didn't fit here. This was something else, something patient, something that had been waiting. Around midnight, I heard it, a soft scratching, faint, deliberate. My blood ran cold. It was coming from the closet. My first instinct was to scream, to throw open the door and confront whoever or whatever was inside, but I froze. The sound wasn't just a noise, it was alive. It had intention. The scratching stopped, and then I felt it, a presence, heavy and oppressive, as if the air itself had thickened. My pulse hammered in my ears. I gripped the edge of Roxy's bed, trying to steady my shaking hands. Slowly, I moved toward the closet, flashlight in hand, breathing shallow, each step feeling like a lifetime. The closet door loomed ahead, casting shadows that writhed unnaturally across the walls. I yanked it open, heart in my throat, flashlight slicing through the darkness. Empty. Nothing. Just the usual coats, shoes, and a faint scent of paper. Then I noticed it, a single sticky note on the floor, bright yellow against the wooden floorboards. I knelt down and picked it up with trembling fingers. Do not sleep, it read. The letters were uneven, jagged, like they had been scratched onto the paper in a rush of fury and obsession. My stomach turned. This wasn't a game. This wasn't child's play. Roxy wasn't imagining it. Someone or something was in our house, watching, waiting, communicating, and it knew I had seen the note. I stuffed it into my pocket and slowly closed the door, feeling the weight of unseen eyes pressing on me from within the darkness. I slept in the living room that night, sitting upright, bat in hand, every shadow a potential threat. Roxy woke in the morning, cheerful as ever, clutching another note. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to convince myself it was a harmless prank, but deep down I knew the closet wasn't empty. The man, or whatever it was still there, and it had a plan. The next few nights were unbearable. I barely slept, keeping Roxy close and the lights on, but no matter what I did, I could feel the presence lingering. Every creak of the house, every shadow that moved slightly against the wall made me jump. I became obsessed with the closet, checking it
constantly, even installing a small camera just to monitor it when I wasn't in the room. Every frame showed nothing, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still there, watching, waiting, patient. One night, as the house was quiet and Roxy slept soundly beside me, I heard it again, the scratching, louder this time, deliberate, angry. I grabbed my flashlight and ran to the closet. My hands were shaking so badly that I could barely hold the door. I yanked it open and froze. Inside, scattered across the floor, were dozens of sticky notes, all in Roxy's handwriting. I recognized the words immediately. Do not sleep. Watch me. He's here. My chest tightened. I could feel it right there in the room, an invisible weight pressing down on me. I gathered the notes, trying to make sense of them, but the pattern didn't exist. It was chaos. And then I noticed one final note, stuck to the inside of the closet door, facing outward. I love Roxy. I'm watching her with you. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a message for me. It was a declaration. Whoever or whatever was in our closet wasn't going anywhere. And now